Hello, carbon-based listeners and silicon-powered friends. Welcome to Mastering the Machine, the podcast where humans and automation collide in perfect harmony. I'm your host, Frank Lamb, and whether you're flesh and blood or circuits and code, we're here to explore industrial automation together. From factory floors to digital cores, we're exploring how machines are reshaping our world, one algorithm at a time. So plug in, power up, and let's master the machine together. My guest today is Patrick Bunn, system integrator and founder of Bunn Automation Systems. He lives near Birmingham, Alabama, and has had an inspiring career from plant maintenance to complex design.
Howdy.
Patrick, how you doing, man? Been working hard today.
Yeah, definitely. It's been on Monday. That's for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. Tell me about where you started your automation journey. Where did you get into industrial automation for the first time in programming?
First time I got into it was really when I was working on my associate's degree in industrial electronics. I wanted to do more than just what they were offering, which was like motor controls and timers and relays and stuff like that, which is cool. But they had an opportunity to do a PLC class, and I took that, and I'm like, hey, this is interesting. And during school, I was able to do a co-op program with a company here locally in Birmingham called Birmingham Rail Locomotive. And we were installing PLCs on locomotives to control them with remote controls, which was pretty cool. And so I was not programming at the time, but I was helping install it. So that was really cool. I was installing a PLC before I even knew what a PLC was, which I think is pretty cool.
I knew ships had PLCs on them. I had never heard that trains had PLCs on them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They use PLCs and they connect them to their traction motors and have feedback on speed. And I mean, yeah, all kinds of stuff with it. It was really cool.
Wow, very cool. And what did they use? Standard US type stuff like Allen Bradley or something proprietary?
To be honest with you, I don't really remember because that was back in 2002, I think. But I think what we used was like a Slick 504 or something like that in the PLC lab that I took.
Okay. Yeah, things have changed a lot since 2002 and 2004.
A little bit.
Yeah, we have tag-based stuff now, and I guess it was coming along then, beginning of the 2000s, the tag-based stuff was appearing, but I think, yeah, Slick's kind of dominated the landscape. So what did you do after you got done with school? What was your first automation job?
Well, because I really wanted to do that type of work, and I only had an associate's degree, I immediately went to UAB to get my electrical engineering degree. I finished one semester there, and then I got a job offer at a steel plant as a technician. And I took that because, money now, as opposed to money later, was more appealing to me. So I got a job as a electrical technician, steel plant, and I worked there for 9 years. And in that 9 years, I focused primarily on PLCs and HMIs and VFDs and learning all I could about those, to the point where anytime there's a new guy come in, they would give them to me, and I would train them because I was pretty good at explaining how the things worked. Because it wasn't just a, hey, do this thing, like here's a work order, do this task. I explained the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this preventative maintenance type procedure? Because when people understand the importance of what you're doing and how that affects the longevity of that instrument and how that instrument plays a key role in the process itself, people are going to be more likely to remember it and care about it, right? Instead of, hey, go wipe off this photo eye. Okay, but why, right? And so having developed a good understanding and knowledge of the process and how all the parts and pieces fit, and the PLC part and the HMI part and the VFD part, I progressed pretty well and thought I was an expert when it came to that type of stuff, to automation. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to leave here and I'm going to go get a job as an automation guy. I'm going to take the leap there. Then I got a job in my first place with Revere as a systems integrator. And I will tell you, there's a slight difference between being a maintenance guy and being an automation engineer, because that engineering role, it's way different to know a PLC well enough to go in there and use it for troubleshooting or go in there and make minor modifications, versus developing something from scratch, developing an IO list and configuring all the hardware and making sure you have the communication set up and figuring out how to make things communicate that don't natively communicate, and determining, what's the best way to lay out your architecture. All these things. I thought I was the bee's knees when it came to automation at the steel plant, but I knew nothing real quick. I realized I don't know much. So
You got very lucky, like some people do in the 90s and early 2000s. You didn't have to have a degree to get those jobs. There were people that, because they had experience in the field, like you said, you did 9 years somewhere else. When I was at Wright Industries, there were a bunch of engineers there that had not even a 2 year degree, but they had worked for like giant, material handling companies that they had to program the PLCs and change things. So they kind of got grandfathered in. And I think nowadays it seems like more people need the checkbox. They need to, you to have at least a 2 year degree or a 4 year degree, and then they kind of put you in that category. Oh, he's an engineer. Whereas before, like I said, some of the best engineers I've met didn't have a 4 year degree, and some of them didn't have a 2 year degree. They just had lots of experience. That's very fortunate that you ended up at Revere, and Revere is a pretty decent sized, respected integrator. So that's a
oh,
good one.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, and
yeah,
they make quality products. So even though I'm no longer with them, I still think they're a great company. So
sure. Yeah, they're at a lot of the trade shows. That's where you learn about some of your other machine builders and get to see their
mhm.
booths and what they've done. How long did you work for Revere?
I was there for 7 years.
And then where did you go from there?
From there, I went to a company called ECNS, which had a kind of similar role to being a systems integrator, but it was more like for OEMs, and they were considered an OEM. And I was there for 2 years, and I left there and went to Hargrove, in their controls and automation group. And that was great because it exposed me to more process. Before it was all PLCs, and Hargrove is more of a process house, and so I got exposure to DCSs, and I had never seen that before. So I'm very fortunate that in my career I've had exposure to all kinds of different industries and whatnot. I've had experience with metals, and obviously lots of metals, some mining, some oil and gas, some chemical, some pharmaceutical, lots of different things now. So
Yeah, and I draw that line between machine control and process control. Of course, people who are in oil and gas or chemical processing or whatever, it's a very different world, like using P&ID, diagrams and things like
mhm.
that, where in machine control, you don't see much of that. I've related before how I did subcontract through Bechtel to the government, and even though we were building discrete machinery, they made us make P&IDs for very non-process control things.
Mm,
And if you've
yeah.
ever tried to create a P&ID for a robot, for instance, it doesn't make a
Yeah, I
lot of
imagine
sense.
that would be a little difficult, I would imagine. Yeah.
Have you ever contracted to others on the side?
I have. I
Yes.
have. I've actually done that before. Some people need some help, so they say, "Hey, look, can you help me with this?" And yeah, sure, I could do that. Yeah. In
Okay.
fact, this is how I started my company, Bunn Automation Consulting, is because a friend of mine who went out on his own, he's mainly Allen Bradley, and I have experience with both Allen Bradley and Rockwell, and Siemens. That's what I meant to say. And he had a Siemens project pop up, and he's like, "Well, you're the Siemens guy, so I'm going to ask you." And I went in there, and it was very, very easy. But because nobody else there knew how to do it, I was the hero, and that kind of sparked it. So it's you get known as someone who knows how to do a certain thing, then you're the person they're going to go to for that. So
Yeah.
finding an itch is a good thing.
So if other people were wanting to go out and contract to other people, what would you advise them to do? Just network and get to know what people are doing and then offer your services?
Oh, absolutely. Networking is the most powerful thing, I think, in this. I think when you realize, it's a scary thing to want to step out on your own, even if it's on the side. You still have the security of your day job, and you're just trying to do it on the side. It's kind of scary, but you realize very quickly that at least for this, what we do for programming and whatnot, it's very less competition driven. Like there's enough work for all of us. We don't look at each other as competition. We look at each other as potential um, people that we can work with. And I found that to be the same sentiment with everyone I talk to. It's not like, oh, I'm better than you or anything like that. It's very much, hey, what skills do you bring to the table? What skills do you bring to the table? And here's the skills I bring to the table. How can we work together? So networking is very, very important. And I was very inspired by the fact that you wanted to develop this list of people and collaborate and come up with a way that, hey, look, I don't, I'm secure enough in what's coming my way that I don't have to hang on to everything. And I don't have to hoard it all. There's enough work for everybody.
Yeah, well,
And if I
indeed,
can,
you can't, right? You can't hang on
yeah, you
to it
can.
all. And I am determined to be a one-person company. And even when I had employees, there were so many things that came my way that I could either didn't have time to do or didn't have the capability to do. It was just outside of my area of expertise. And so I always figured, well, if I'm going to refer a job to somebody else, they may do the same. They know what I do, I know what they do.
Mhm.
And when something comes up my alley, it's worked out that way for a long time. So on the other side, have you ever subcontracted anybody?
Yes, yes, and I'm actually in the process right now of going through the proposal for something pretty large that I is too big for me to do by myself. Absolutely, and so I've had to find because of my networking, I'm able to say, okay, well, I need this, and I need this, and I need this. Let's connect with these people. I think these are a good fit. And the bigger the network you have, the more likely you're going to find what you need and mitigate risk by having, backup plans. Like, hey, I have three people who can do this. And if one person's not available or another person they're tied up with something else, you always have options. So, the bigger you can build your network, the better. And I think that's a much better and a safer way than, like you said, I don't really want to hire people myself, but having people that you have access to that you can contract out, that I think that's a win-win. Because if you're working with other people that are entrepreneurially minded, their motivation is going to be there, right? You don't have to inspire them or try to push them to want to succeed or to do the job. They want to do it. They're internally motivated, right? So if you guys align in the scope, then you know that they're going to be just as adamant as you are about success. So
Yeah, one of the things I'm running into when making this list is people, just about everybody I've talked to has mentioned this. If you are picking somebody somewhat off of a list and you don't know them well,
mm,
what risks are there and how do you vet people that you don't know a lot about?
that is a hard one. That really is a hard one. And what I've done so far is I've tried to make that connection myself. And even if you meet somebody in person, they could tell you, all the things in the world. But you try to also communicate with people that do know them and do work with them. So the bigger your network is, the more people you can pull as references to get kind of, hey, look, hey, do you know so and so? Have you worked with so and so? What have you, experienced with them? And you're going to find that, talking with different people, you're going to get different angles, which is a good thing. Not all are going to be positive, and that's not actually a bad thing. Getting a real picture of somebody is a good thing. The pluses, the minuses, all of it, right? In my head, I think I'm awesome. But you know what? There's some people who might be able to see some of my flaws more clearly than I can. And that's a good thing for you to see and hear from somebody else if you're going to work with me, right? And so I think that's a good thing. Finding all these different angles that you can get from people, which, comes from networking, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
some of the organizations I know, like it's been suggested to me, for instance, why don't you go talk to CSIA, Control Systems Integrators of America, or Control Systems Integrator Association, it might be. What I've found, it seems like they more cater to the very large
yes,
organizations. Yeah,
yes.
engineering companies will be CSIA approved. And then you have ISA, which is another one, right? The I go back quite a while with them because I was in sales for a little bit, and they used to be called the Instrumentation Society of America. And they used to
Mm.
do tabletop shows where they would get a bunch of their members together and they would have show instrumentation. That was mostly at process control equipment on tables and things. And now they are the International Society of Automation, and they actually will not certify people, but I guess they have people take tests and give some kind of a certification. I don't know how serious it is, but it's always made me question because they seem to cater more toward process control. So I don't know that
Yeah,
a certification would say this person can program a packaging machine or something,
yeah,
or program a
yeah,
robot, right? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, certification and stuff like that could be misleading, right? Because I mean, any test can you can figure out how to pencil whip something. That doesn't really give you an apt understanding of what that person's capable of. And for example, you can meet somebody who might be a very, very smart person, right? Very capable, but maybe they just know this one thing. Like, for example, I knew this one person when I worked at Revere. He was the smartest person I knew when it came to SCADA systems. Had no idea what an encoder was connected to a motor going to a VFD. And to me, that blew my mind. Like, how do you not know what that is, right? And I realized that not every automation person has the background that I do because I have a lot of that field knowledge. I've learned all that stuff, and so just because they know one thing doesn't mean they know all things. Just because someone calls themselves a systems integrator doesn't mean they have exposure to all the things that are associated with systems integration, right? A great point would be, both you and I spoke at OT SCADACon, and each one of those had specialized topics. And each one of those people had a special niche that they kind of represented, right? And for some people, maybe they've experienced all of that. But there's also some people that, hey, all they've done is this one thing, right? And it's important to know that just because you know one thing doesn't mean you know all the things, right? And then further, like even if they know this thing doesn't mean they would be a good person to hire because maybe they're very much like, I'm going to do the single task and I can't think outside of the box, and you need them to take the ball and run with it. Those are two different skills, right? Being able to do a simple task and being able to own a project are not the same, right? And you're not going to find that out until you talk with people and get to know people, right? You can tell by their vocabulary how they talk, how they present themselves, whether or not they can probably handle some of the things that you'd want to hire somebody out from a contractor standpoint.
Before we dive back into today's episode, let me tell you about the team behind Mastering the Machine. When your manufacturing operation needs to level up its automation game, there's one name you need to know: Automation Consulting, LLC. Whether you're integrating new systems, training your workforce, or need expert consulting on industrial automation challenges, we speak both human and machine language fluently. From PLC programming to process optimization, we help manufacturing companies bridge the gap between what is and what's possible. We also host the ultimate training platform for automation professionals. At the Automation Academy, we've created your complete automation learning ecosystem. Our subscription-based training platform gives you unlimited access to comprehensive video courses on systems integration, PLCs, and HMIs. Download technical documents, software tools, and resources that you can actually use in the field. Plus, get personalized job aptitude assistance to advance your career in industrial automation. But here's the best part: connect with fellow automation professionals on IO Central, our exclusive social media platform where the automation community shares knowledge, solves problems, and builds the future together. Whether you're a seasoned engineer or just starting your automation journey, everything you need is at www.automationllc.com. That's automationllc.com. Join the subscription platform where automation expertise meets community. Now back to today's episode. One of the things that we had when I was doing work for Automation NTH is the people that design their control panels had to go work in the panel shop. They had to build
Good.
control panels to be allowed to draw control panels. because they would put things in there that were almost physically impossible to wire. They
Hmm.
learned the difficulties themselves for that. So yeah, wider experience, especially when it comes to design and things like that. Programming, same thing. Go out and start up a machine before you write a program for a machine, and figure
That's
out
good.
all the things that are, you know,
Hmm.
little things that can happen in your program. As far as your future plans, of course, we've talked a little bit in the past, and uh, there's up and downsides to ever starting your own thing. Of course, you're doing some of that on the side, but if you were to ever jump out and start your own company, what do you think it would be?
That's where I'm at right now, is trying to decide what that would be. I honestly like the idea of being a one man show, kind of like you are doing. And the things I like to cater to is smaller companies, right? The smaller companies that don't want to go to a big systems integrator or something like that. Maybe their projects are not big enough to warrant going to a large company, or these large companies are like, that's not worth my time. I don't want to, go quote a job that small. They're the ones who need help, right? They're the ones that, hey, I can come in there and I remember one of the first clients I had. I went in there and they were troubleshooting a drive that didn't work. And so I went in there and figured out how to make that drive work. And while I was there, I noticed that this was like a skid that they bought, right? And they had a HMI screen, this was all Siemens. They hit one button to start a motor, wait a couple seconds, hit another button on the HMI, start another motor, wait a couple seconds. So it's like they had this automated process that was not at all automated. It was very manual. And I told them, I was like, I can automate that for you, right? Like, I'll write you a functional specification, explain to me how it works. I'll write a functional specification, then I'll come out here and program and I'll commission it, and it'll work automatically. They're like, you could do that? I'm like, yeah, you're a wizard. And then I did it. It was very, very simple. But to people like that who don't have the exposure of people who can do these kind of things, they think you're just a magic man and come in there with a wizard hat. Those are the people I like to do work for, because they're going to very much appreciate what you bring to the table, right?
Yep.
It's not so cutthroat. It's not so, oh, well, you got to prove your worth. They see that, they recognize it, and they understand they need that, but it doesn't make sense to them. They're so small. It's not going to make sense for them to pay someone like me to be on staff. That's not cost effective at all. But to be able to call on somebody like me when they need it, hey, they know who to reach to. That's really what I want to do. I like helping people. That's what I like, helping the little man, right? That's kind of what I want to do.
To that note, somebody that can even write a functional specification, because so many of these smaller companies, can you just help me do this?
Yes,
Well, hey, let's step back for a second and let's plan this thing and write down
yes,
exactly what we're going to do
yes,
step by step. And if there's any risks in there, let's take care of that first
yes.
before we get on to the main project
Yes. Sometimes people leave that step out, or they don't think it's that important. But what I found is sometimes communication isn't the most straight line, and sometimes you can misunderstand some things. So when you have it written down and everyone can see it and review it, hey, look, make sure this is what we're saying. Yes, this is what we're saying. Boom, we're good. And it went fine. Like, commissioning, that was one of the easiest commissionings I've ever done. So.
So how did you get into plant packs? Was that something Revere did?
No, well, yes, Revere does PlantPax, and I had a little exposure there, but I got more into it when I was at Hargrove. Hargrove, also, being a more process type house, and then Rockwell developing PlantPax to basically be their DCS equivalency. I learned that because one of the projects that I did several projects with them, but one was really big where they were doing like a whole, replace their Wonderware with plant packs and upgrade all their controllers. I think there was like 28 of them or something like that. Take them all the P processors. In that process, I went to the certification to make sure that I can do that, so Rockwell can put their stamp of approval on it. So that was kind of the why on that one.
So does plant packs have its own, I suppose, graphics program, or are you using Factory Talk View with that?
You're using Factory Talk View SE, and you're using Studio 5000, just like you would for the PLC, right? So really what PlantPax is, it's not a different necessarily like platform, either hardware or software. It's really more of a standard. And that's what a lot of people might miss. It's how you standardize how you present this information. They have standardized blocks that they use both inside the code and inside the graphics. So you can have a block for, like, for example, if you wanted a PID loop, right? They have a PID block that you put on the screen, and then that has the same tag tied to the PLC program. So you pull this block in, throw it into everything with PlantPax is going to be function block. So you have a function block, I think it's called P underscore AI or something like that, right? And it links up together, and it comes up with its own, like, on the screen, you pop up a faceplate, and then the faceplate's got so many layers to it. It's pretty interesting how in depth. It can be very overwhelming if you've never been exposed to it before. But once you get used to it, you're like, man, this thing's so powerful. Like, you don't even have to set up all your configuration inside the PLC. You could do it all from the HMI, which I think is really cool, right?
Yeah, there was somebody showed me this. There's a Honeywell controller that fits inside of a Allen Bradley rack, inside of a ControlLogix rack. They use the same cards and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I don't know if that's Honeywell's DCS or a version of Honeywell's DCS. But when I saw that at first, I was like, well, is that PlantPax, or is it just a competing thing to PlantPax where Honeywell teamed up with Rockwell to use their I/O?
I think it was a way for Honeywell to utilize Rockwell's I/O, and I've actually did a project where we migrated from Honeywell to Rockwell. We didn't even have to change the I/O, so I thought that was kind of interesting.
Okay, yeah, I don't know, because I don't know much about, for instance, Honeywell's. If they have a SCADA system or they use some third-party thing. They do.
What's funny about that particular project is we were migrating from Honeywell to Rockwell, and I never had done Honeywell before, and I didn't have access to the program. So what they actually did PDF printouts of the program, and then the configuration files for each of the blocks was in a Notepad Plus. So from Notepad Plus and PDFs, I had to build an entire program, which was pretty interesting. So
yeah, I think in the future when it does look like a lot of platforms are migrating to text-based, some structured text-based things. Certainly Codesys is that way, and that may lend itself to more. Okay, here's the Notepad printout of it. Just copy it and paste it into this, and do some kind of an AI conversion or something of the text to the new format, and it'll do the same thing pretty much, and maybe save people some time.
It would be nice if it had the like logic in there, but it wasn't that. It was just the parameters basically. So
Okay,
it was like a snapshot of the parameters inside that block, right? They didn't really show you how the block worked. They keep that locked down on the DCSs. Like, they don't want you to see how the block works. They kind of give you here's a help, this is how it's supposed to work, but here's your parameter files. Like, for example, you need the parameter file to know how a scale block actually scaled it, right?
Right. So did they define at least the inputs and outputs of it, and what the sensors were and what the valves were that it was controlling and things? You could see that, but you couldn't necessarily see what was going on inside of it.
Yeah.
Your plans in the future, you say mostly smaller companies. Are you worried about, I don't know, it depends on how small, I suppose, how people finance jobs?
That's not something I've really considered, to be honest with you. And maybe it's not just I only focus. I'd really thought about, well, what if this might be a little ambitious for someone who's just one person, but what if I had multiple different, like, divisions, right? It's hard not to think like a big systems integrator, but like having one offering, hey, to the small people, and then one offering to really bigger ones, just like this project that I'm working on now is pretty big. It wouldn't fit in the small category at all. And then another one might just be, hey, like network architecture stuff. Like that's something that is a big need, and having that as an offering, that might be a thing. And having, I'm conflicted because on one side I know that niching down is going to give you, the notoriety, but on the other hand, I think having a couple of options is better than just putting all your eggs in one basket, right? So I don't want to basically go out there and say, hey, I could do all the things because that's going to burn me out. I get that. And okay, well, then you're just like any other systems integrator. But if I'm like, hey, look, I know these two things, these two or three things. Okay, well, that's the things you're going to come to me for, right? And I think that would be probably a better recipe for me. Now, my desire is for the smaller guy, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to find enough smaller guys to justify being full time. So if that's the case, I might have to take a big job every once in a while for finance and they do the smaller ones just to help out, right? That might be how it works.
Yeah, the reality is, I mean, I jumped out on my own very early on and ran out of my good high-tech sweet spot jobs. And before you knew it, and this was like 1996, I had like built plastic boxes for people, just glued them together, instrumentation enclosures. What else? Done a whole bunch of just on-site wiring, pulled a bunch of cable and wired it to stuff that other people had built. So when you get hungry, you find that you'll do all kinds of things that when you're really busy, right, you wouldn't even entertain.
And what we do is very feast and famine. It's
Yeah,
very much.
yeah, it is. And right now, I think overall, just looking at the U.S. economy, it seems like we're in a waiting mode. People are kind of waiting to see what happens, and
Yeah.
it's hard maybe with the tariff thing. There's some uncertainty, and I think people
Yeah.
can't count on, is the price for this thing that I bid today going to be the same in 3 months,
Hmm.
right? And or should I stock up on these things now because I know that in 3 months they're going to be 30% more or something like that.
Exactly.
So yeah, I've seen a lot of waiting, but we'll see. A lot of this stuff you can't predict. If people could predict it that accurately, they'd make a whole lot of money off of it for sure.
Yep. There's that. Yep. Absolutely.
So, no immediate plans. I know you're doing some side work, and you've mentioned that you've subcontracted others. You've been subcontracted, and you
Hmm.
have an opportunity to look at something very, very large right now. I know that you're looking at, which will take its own time and negotiation and whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, things like that don't happen overnight necessarily. Any other observations or anything that you see in the economy or in the manufacturing landscape right now?
The biggest thing I'm seeing is the need for networking. Again, we talked about that earlier, but I think that's a very important thing right now because I feel like even with all the uncertainty and the waiting and the not sure what's going to happen, I think what's going to keep us all afloat is just better networking, better because we're going to be able to see, hey, look, this person has this. Let's share. Let's share the wealth. Let's bring it on. I'm already finding stuff for other people to do because I can't do it all myself. And
Hmm.
I think the further we do with that, the more we build our own network, our own tribe, our own group, that's going to be a good thing for all of us.
OT Skatacon, of course, all the speakers met each other, but you also met some potential customers there and
Oh, yeah.
people that worked in different plants, and that's worked out pretty well for
Hmm.
me. And then the other thing is, for those out there who don't know, don't forget your vendors. Network with your vendors because
Oh,
they
yeah.
are in all these plants and they know what's
Hmm.
going on and where and who's growing and who's shrinking and who might be available and who might be looking for a special solution or whatever. So, anything else that you want to let people know about what you do in the industry or any things that you would want to say to the audience?
I think there's going to be a rise in the need for people who have an understanding for control system networking. I think that's a big thing. A lot of people are talking about the industry 4.0 and all that, but having the base understanding of how the networking aspect works, I think that's important to make those things work too. So don't just focus on the fancy, shiny, cool buzzword stuff. You also need the backbone to make it work, right? Because if you put all this stuff on network and your network's just poorly designed, it doesn't matter how good your tech is, it's not going to work because you're going to be bogged down. So having a good strength in that is probably very important. And
Yep.
so that's one of the things that I want to start offering is that, maybe assessments for networks or recommendations or reevaluations or things like that. That's something that I'm trying to kind of work up, and I'm already getting, from OT Skaticon, I've gotten several requests to do training, and so I'm trying to figure out, okay, do I just want to do, training for a group of people? Do I want to do a training class like on video? I haven't decided that yet, but I've gotten there's plenty of opportunities, and there's not a whole lot of people out there. Josh, of course, is a great resource, and anyone who wants to go to Trace RepCon, that would be a great thing to go to. I would recommend that. But he can't train everybody, right? So I want to help him, right?
Exactly.
Lock arms with it, because
for people's reference, Patrick and I both have an experience with a particular plant that had all of their PLCs, all of their remote devices, all on the same network, 10 dot something network, right? Which is usually a Class A network, and there may have been, I don't know, 200 devices all there talking all at the same time, and it was maddeningly slow, this particular network. So yes, people need help with that. And the other thing that's a little bit scary that's coming up, there's some kind of LoRaWAN and mesh networking techniques, right, where everything is talking to everything else, and if something goes down, then it reroutes itself through other devices. And I'm just on the edge of that. But yes, communications and networks are changing, right? Lots and lots of different bandwidths and media, wireless, lots and lots of wireless going on, and keeping up with that, that's another whole tricky thing. So yeah, I think there could be a good niche right there just in doing communications and networking things for people. Okay, and if people want to reach you, get a hold of you. I know LinkedIn is awesome for everybody, and of course you have a website. And what is that website?
The website is bunnautomation.com.
Okay, and that's BUNN automation.com.
Correct.
Okay, and I'll put that in the show notes. And of course you can connect with Patrick on LinkedIn, Patrick Bunn, probably in Patrick Bunn, right? unless there's more Patrick Bunns, and then it may be Patrick Bunn.
There is actually. There's a Patrick Bunn who connected with me on LinkedIn. I'm like, well, that's interesting. I thought I was the only one, but I am not. So
yeah, it's funny how you run into your name in different places. There was an evil comic book character named Frank Lamb. And if you Google it, you find him in like Dick Tracy comic books or something like that. He was the bad guy. I think that's most of what we have to say today.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for having this time allotted to chat with me. I'm glad that I got to talk with you today about this.
Yeah, and we got to cover kind of some different subjects and things. That was really good.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Mastering the Machine. Whether you're headed back to the production line or entering sleep mode, remember, in the world of automation, we're all learning to speak the same language. Thanks for joining me today, both my human listeners and any AI overlords who might be tuning in. Until next time, keep your sensors sharp, your processes optimized, and your curiosity fully operational. This is Frank Lamb signing off. Stay automated, stay amazing.